It fills the air, waiting for the dawn to give it voice.
Open wide the vision of the world. Feel the love that reigns in everything. Now it's your chance to start again. Breathe in hopes of peace, of light, of love.
Abre el horizonte en torno a ti. Siente el latido del amor. Ahora es el momento de empezar. Una senda de paz, de luz y de amor. Decídete y afronta los problemas. Para el odio no habrá lugar. Un nuevo mundo donde habitar unidos. Para empezar y hallar la paz. Sábalo de yertzen guruan. Maitasun topada sentitu. Orai besteko garaia da. Baki argi maitasun bidean.
Sembrareu la pau i ja veuràs. La teva esperança brollarà. Espines a les mans et trobaràs. Però un món tot nou naixerà. Decídete y afronta los problemas. Para el odio no habrá lugar. Un nuevo mundo donde habitar unidos. Para empezar y hallar la paz.
Abre horizonte alrededor. Horizonte alrededor. Siente olas de lludo amor. Agora entre de empezar. Un vieiro de paz, de luz de amor.
Open wide the vision of the world. Feel the love that reigns in everything. Now is your chance to start again. Breathing hopes of peace, of light, of love. Breathing hopes of peace, of light, of love. You can't tell me that there's nothing left to do. You can't tell me that there's nothing left in you. 'Cause I still.
Pronto, 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 l'inglese è qui, vi assicuro che sono qua.
Pass right through their eyes, but we can't just forgo the thought of people trying to survive with these oceans of lies, where the sky seems so high. Can we even care to look them in the eye?
can you see? This love will set us free. Hold on to live and keep this faith so we could fly.
You've never been alone. Now we can carry on. This life given to us. Together we will breathe the hope that you're here. Now make a stand. We will reach out. Now you understand. You've never been alone. Now we can carry on. This life given to us. Together we will breathe the hope that's in our This life given to us. Together we will breathe the hope that's in our
Throughout history, many people have dared to do different things.
To go against the tide, to speak out, and to change the course of history.
To dare means to be brave enough to do something.
To dare is to be aware of the wounds of the society.
To dare is to take action.
In this United World Week 2021, we want to dare to care.
That is why, from May 1 to 9,
We will build a global network of fraternal actions
That put care at the center.
Yes, it will be a global network. Because beyond physical and cultural borders,
We know that caring is universal value and that building a more fraternal world is possible.
Many physical and digital events will take place.
Some will be local initiatives, others global.
People from all over the world will be connected.
and you will be able to join in wherever you are. What matters is that every event and every person who joins
Has enough strength to build a more united world.
by learning, acting, and sharing.
And you, what do you dare to care of?
Gondoskodás.
Voivoda.
Care.
Proteger.
Забота.
رعاية.
Condução.
Ter atenção.
Sorge tragen.
Niaisu.
Cuidar.
Aruga.
Eccoci, eccoci. Ciao a tutti, benvenuti in questo nuovo appuntamento.
Welcome, everybody, and welcome to this new meeting of the United World Week. This is Federica Comazzi. I am a teacher and an expert in marginality, and I am a rugby trainer and part of SportMeet, which is the international network made up of people who practice, teach, or simply love sport. And they attempt through their life to promote universal fraternity. I will accompany you at this time devoted to sport, as you know very well. This is the theme which was with us this year, and it's Dare to Care, which is, and it's very well known how sport, which is practiced and taught in a given way, may become a powerful tool. There are many projects, experiences, and experiments as to how sport can become cure and care, how it can involve those which are marginalized and forgotten, including them. This evening we would like to dwell on a special category which is sometimes forgotten in sports, and this is women. We will listen to witnesses of women who have been able to see sport as a tool for social empowerment for themselves and for others, overcoming inequality and offering a future to those who, due to their own social background, would not normally have one. But we would like, before we do this, to reflect on something. We do so with Lucia Castelli, who's a pedagogist and a teacher of physical education and a teacher of psychopedagogy at the UEFA Federal Courses for Football Trainers and the Lombardy Federation of Skiing Instructors. She helps the parents of young sportsmen and women to live with responsibility and skill what their role is. She is herself a sportswoman. She likes to make an effort and always have skis on her feet. Paolo Cipolli will be with her. He's the coordinator of SportMeet, and he has an experience as a sports counsellor for 10 years in the municipality of Cascina in the province of Pisa in Italy, and he is passionate about sport, a marathon runner who loves to run with his friends. So over to you.
Grazie Federica, buonasera. Ciao Lucia.
Thank you, Federica. Good evening. Hello, Lucia. Hello, everyone. We begin immediately with a few questions. We've heard about your CV and your well-represented legacy in relation with the sport as an athlete and as a teacher and trainer. You know various sides of both professional and non-professional sports. So the question would be, what is the situation, especially in Italy, which is perhaps the province you know better, vis-à-vis the role of women in professional competitive sport and in amateur sport? Thank you very much. I also am involved and cooperate with SportMeet, and I would like to try to answer your question, Paolo. The recent data, which represent a snapshot of the situation of women who practice sport, both amateur sport and professional, are not very encouraging, to tell the truth, here in Italy, and I only speak about my country. They come from CONI, which is the National Italian Olympic Committee. The numbers are not very encouraging, and I'm going to quote a few. Only 28% of women are athletes. And these amounts, these numbers pertain to the female participation within the entire industry of sport, which in Italy is under the auspices of CONI. So 28% are female athletes, 15% is represented by women in managerial roles in sports clubs and societies. trainers, technicians, only 19%, and this percentage is even lower if we consider federal managers. Basically, there are no female presidents of sports associations in the federation, whether it's soccer, athletic, basketball, even artistic gymnastics. And then we come to referees and umpires. We are looking at 18%. I'm not sure whether this reflects a different international picture. I don't know. Perhaps we'll hold a survey on this. But from this, we can understand that unless women take on a more managerial role, a role of responsibility, directorship, or if these women remain a minority, it is clearly understandable that they cannot be privy to decisional processes. Women do not decide about sport, put quite simply. This is what I have to say. When faced with this snapshot you shared with us, and which is certainly not comforting due to the deficit of female participation, could you tell us what the factors, the elements stopping women's access to sport are? What is your point of view? What are the obstacles hindering entrance into the various sports and into sports government? Well, despite more than 50 years having elapsed from 1968, the great time of emancipation and empowerment movement, the result is still obstacles, hindrances, and more obstacles to participating to sport for women. So, just for convenience, in terms of translation, I know I am being interpreted at this time. I will go slowly and I'll try to list these. It's just a bullet list as to trying to explain where it comes from. This is my experience as an athlete. I competed for 30 years, about 500 individual competitions. I studied, and I have been in dialogue with my counterparts, and this is the list of hindrances. First of all, female sports are second-rate. Think about soccer, for example, where in Italy, at least, male soccer is more broadcast and considered to be simply better. But other female sports par excellence, such as artistic gymnastics or rhythmic gymnastics, are not considered to be broadcast worthy or as good as their male counterparts. There are still gender stereotypes, seeing women more inclined and more appropriate for certain sports such as gymnastics, dance, volleyball perhaps, and not rugby or soccer, martial arts perhaps. There are different levels of public recognition on the media. Just suffice it to think about how little female sports events are broadcast on television, on social media, and talked about on the press. If you consider the following, prizes, reward money, and engagements are lower for women in sports, given the same effort, the same commitment, and the same parameters in the event itself. This should suffice as a comment. A mother or a wife who is a competitive sportswoman, even in Lombardy, I'm not talking about Sicily in the deep south, but even in the evolved northern portion of Italy, is not necessarily approved. There is an underlying accusation that she is neglecting her children and her family. And these mothers are not fully supported in terms of welfare. They need to choose sport or family.
In Italia, un mese fa,
in Italy, there was a very negative event took place about a month ago when Lugli, a volleyball player who's pregnant, had to give up her career as a volleyball player. Often it is women who give up their passion. They don't allow themselves to have one. They don't feel legitimized because they feel guilty when they take time away from their family, from their children, their parents. In Italy, there is a law which is not constitutional. It is Bill of Law 91, dated 1981. And it regulates professional sport. Professional sport at this time is allowed only for 4 male sports: soccer, basketball, cycling, and golf. And only the male versions. So a female football player cannot be considered a professional. Male one who is in Premier League or first or second league is a professional, given equal effort, that is. So only recently has the Italian government committed to review this bill of law within a time horizon of 2 years. So the law may be amended thanks to the results of our female athletes, football players, at the last World Cup. They were classified eighth, and they had to play against professional teams. Thanks also to the success of our female skiers who operate at the highest level, and in order to be professionals, they need to become soldiers. So basically, they need to enroll in the military corps. That's the only way in which they can become professionals. And this applies to men as well who are not part of these 4 professionally recognized sports. Once again, soccer, basketball, cycling, and golf. So the only way is through the military. Lucia, shall we do a little time out in our conversation and try to involve our listeners? And so we suggest that anyone who is connected can follow the Google Forms link, where you will be able to see a brief questionnaire you can all respond to, so we are able to collate some information as to our listeners and try to understand what your point of view is, what the feeling you have is vis-à-vis the level of empowerment of women in the country you're in. So 1.5 minutes so that you are able to follow the link, which you will see, and give us your answers. Thank you.
Sono arrivate già alcune risposte.
So we have seen a few responses already. The form is always open, so feel free to respond at any time, and we will bear in mind your answers. And at the end of the interview we are holding with Lucia Castelli, there will be another method of involvement. This entails a link where you will be able to highlight any point of view, question, keyword, or any special idea which will be of use in the final open dialogue with everyone, with the audience. So let's go back to Lucia now. We spoke about limitations and hindrances standing between women and sport in terms of access and in terms of governance. We spoke about the reasons which might represent a limitation. So, which proposals would be viable in order to improve the general picture of female presence, considering women, sportswomen, as one of those categories which are marginalized from a sector and an industry which is undoubtedly beneficial to one's own expression and one's own well-being. Lucia, you speak about a conversion in the sports world. What proposals do you feel should be put forward in order to change the situation? Well, the change needs to be a social one, a cultural one, and an educational one. And therefore, this is a political matter. I will try to list a few proposals in a very brief way in order to facilitate interpretation. It would be of interest to us here in Europe to circulate and apply the European Charter of Women's Rights in sports. This is not very well known and not at all applied. It dates back to 1985 and has recently been brought up to date, and this European Charter of the Rights of Women in Sport was the result of the effort of the Italian Union of Women for Popular Sports, for People's Sports, and it contains very useful guidelines aimed at governments, schools, municipalities, local governments, and all those stakeholders who need to take political decisions. Contains guidelines in order to promote equal opportunities between men and women for free and open access to sport, both in terms of performed sport and governance in sport. In this sense, there is a wonderful book by Luciano Senatori, who was the president of UISP for many years, called Gender Equality in Sport, with suggestions and advice that I do believe is of great use, and I would gift it to our Minister of Sport.
In Italy, the Minister for Sport does not have a portfolio. Without a portfolio, that means they don't have any cash to spend, so there's no use at all. Nothing can be done for nothing. In brackets, as it were, for the Italian-speaking people, on the 13th of May, there'll be the election of the committee, the Olympic National Olympic Italian Committee, and a woman is a candidate for the first time, our great cyclist Antonella Belluti, And she is standing with other two male candidates for the presidency of this body. So we really wish the best for her. Schools can do a tremendous amount. Apart from being an incentive for physical exercise and movement, they can also tell the stories of women, as we know now today, of courageous women. Not only sporty and courageous women, but women who studied, women who are on the front line, women who are politicians. So it's quite late on, in fact, that I met women. I have to confess I didn't know certain things, but this for Italians. In 1946, after the Second World War, Italy, the Constitution of Italy was written by the fathers, the constituent fathers, as they were called. There were 21 mothers, constituent mothers. I never heard this at school, never, ever at all. I discovered it recently. So I could give you loads of examples. Also in sciences, read about Einstein's wife. Read her biography. It's absolutely amazing. Without his wife, Einstein wouldn't have been Einstein. Read the biography of Marie Curie, and so on and so forth. Did they teach us about these people at school? No, they didn't. So, some other proposals. Supporting women socially. Social and welfare support for women, concrete help with family commitments, availability of nurseries, where children can be cared for, taught without the constant presence of their mothers. Children should be taught equally between mum and dad. We have to divide up the tasks in the family so that both dad and mum have the same amount of time available to them to dedicate themselves to the things they feel passionate about, like sport. As a teacher, I see today too, even today, that parents teach their male and female children differently. They have different expectations. They give them different types of gifts. They offer them games for boys and games for girls. Also, in the choice of high school, there are international studies on this, that the girls are directed towards humanistic studies. But it's not that girls aren't good at maths. They're better than the boys if you actually want to look at the facts. But they are advised to be teachers. Work half-time. The other half-time you can be at home. Another suggestion is to invest in grassroots sports, not only in competitive sports. You know that often women don't get engaged with sport because the competitive sport is the one people are most seem to be interested in. But often women are not interested in competitive sport. They're interested in free sport without particular classifications, without competition. Sport for health. Sport to express themselves, to socialize, for recreation. And this type of sport, enjoyable sport, playful sport, enabling people to socialize, improve their health, are of no less value. In Italy, Italians are very, very sedentary. Only 3% of the Italian population is involved in competitive sport, but the one that's broadcast the most is competitive sport, which is counterproductive to real sport because you sit down and watch it. Instead, sport for all should be encouraged beyond gender. And then also free access to professional sport for those who are really good, high-level sport. And now I would like to thank an amazing woman, a businesswoman called Luisa Rizzitelli. She's an Italian. She's president of an association called ASSIST, which is the National Association of Female Athletes. It helps women athletes to survive, to have the same rights as men. And she's doing a great deal to enable more women to enter the world of professional sport. And I will end now. There is a danger. Enabling more women to enter into professional sport is also opening up this world to a world governed by men, by money, by power struggles, business, by economic and speculative interest, stereotypes of all kinds. And so women will want to come into this whole aggressive world if they, at least they should be able to, if they want to. But even if they wanted to, they're currently excluded. Thank you, Lucia, for this very important information that you've given us, focusing on equal opportunities in the first instance. So coming to a conclusion, summing up because time is running out, this initiative is located within the framework of Dare to Care. I wanted to ask you, do you think that these two terms, apart from being two significant words and attitude, they're very concrete attitudes, courage and care, can these words contribute to more interpretations? Yes, courage is certainly necessary for the emancipation of women in sport. Courage has never been lacking in women, and they've always used their courage in favor of others. But courage is needed above all. What type of courage is needed by women? That of legitimizing their passion for sport without feeling guilty about neglecting their children and family. I don't think that care as such is necessary for emancipation, but let me explain what I mean. I've always considered this feeling, this attitude, which many believe is innate in women, this caring attitude, to be, as it were, a prejudice and a constraint that society has attributed exclusively to women, as if it were a rigid and stereotyped role, which has trapped them then in caring for the children, for their husband, for the elderly. So let's really take note. Caring is a desirable value for everybody, regardless of their gender. It's a synonym for generosity and altruism. Caring should be promoted and spread everywhere. But it's this very altruism that has often stopped women from choosing a special job, a coveted job, but one that involved travel or relocation, or stopped them from embarking on a sporting career which involved being away from the family for a while, for a period of time. So the time has come for society to take real care of women's freedom. It's a cultural and educational issue, and it has to start with parents themselves when they educate their sons and their daughters. Care must be taught, and it must be followed through as a value. It must be witnessed to both boys and girls 50-50. Thank you, Lucia. Thank you for these very helpful contributions. So now we're going to have another break for 1 minute. As I said before, you can open up a link to see where you can put your questions and comments on the wall. This wall will be open for the duration of the webinar, and it'll be used also for the final dialogue, and Lucia will be staying with us. And there'll be some other testimonies, and then we'll all be at the end for questions and answers.
Bene, grazie.
Thank you. Thanks very much for this introduction. Now that we've had a deeper look into our subject, we can go a little bit more into the heart of things, which is about caring. So now, I think it would be good, really nice, to go and hear some experiences. Since we have focused on Italy, we'd like to have a little international overview. So we're going to present the experiences of 2 Indian women who played hockey for India and who helps girls from poor areas through sport. And then Rajini, also Indian, who does athletic dance. And then we'll understand also the context in India regarding women's sport. So let's go with the first video.
Patricia Furtado dall'India.
My name is Patricia. I love sport. It wasn't easy for me because at the start I had no support from my family or from society. Going to school, going home, going out to play. It wasn't easy. If I wanted to go and train, there was nobody to accompany me. There were many problems, but whatever anybody said to me, I still wanted to play hockey for my country. I really love this sport. Hockey is very appreciated in India. It's really enjoyed, and it was all I wanted to do. But I understood that playing for my nation was already
another game.
It's just really playing another game. So I started realizing that other people had been deprived of opportunities in the way that I had been. So now I help many children who can see, and I see how happy they are when they too play sport and when they're successful. Hello, everyone. My name is Regini. I consider myself an athlete because my sport has been part of my life. For many years, I played basketball at school and college. More recently, I have undertaken sport and dance together, and I compete nationally and internationally. I'm part of the Sport Meet team in India. I took part in the Sport Meet meeting in Rome a few years ago. And thinking of sport as a way for building a sense of family among was very special for me, very important, especially through the dice of Sport for Peace. BBC studies in 2020 showed that 40% of people interviewed think that the women's sport are not as entertaining as men's sport. Indian boys play football, cricket, volleyball, running, and cycle. The girls don't have a broad choice when we discuss sport. In the same survey, a third of those interviewed identified one or more sports as being not suitable for women. These include wrestling, boxing, and weightlifting. The very disciplines in which many Indian women, like the two sisters I know, really can excel. In 2021 lockdown, despite everything, we're still trying to do our sports. In India, generally speaking, the priority is given to men and not women. Nonetheless, women try to make progress. There isn't much infrastructure, there isn't much encouragement neither by family nor society, and other problems. Many of these young women want to go into a career in sport, but it's very difficult for them because even having education is already very expensive in itself. And for many people, practicing sport isn't simple. You need to have equipment, time, the right kind of food. Let's take, for example, Palman, not practice much in India. We have hockey, cricket, badminton, and even boxing and wrestling.
As I said, if we have the support of family and society in teaching these children what the base is and to give them a passion for sport, I am certain they will have a great success. Now that we are forced to be in lockdown, we can't encourage them to do sport, but for what we have built, with them in the past, they are able to continue to practice in their own context, in their own areas, and this continues.
Superare la povertà e il patriarcato.
Overcoming poverty and the patriarchate are some of the main challenges we need to deal with. India won 13 Olympic medals after Sydney 2000, and women represent 5. This is a sign of the change in the sports landscape of the country. The 15 medals we won before the year 2000 were all won by men. Even though women have made great progress in the world of sport, in India there is still a gender prejudice. Families in the rural areas of India attribute greater importance to education and to marriage. Sport is at the end of the list. There is a great gap between the amount of money men receive for sport with regard differently to women. The infrastructures in order to encourage women to practice sport are not good enough. The safety of women and violence against women, as well as sexual harassment, continue to exist. Sport, once it is professional or amateur, has an impact on women, even outside the field of play. I'm an athlete myself, and I can say that sport has contributed to form me as a person, enabling me to be resilient and self-confident and a team player, which is very, very important. Sports can open up a whole range of opportunities, such as scholarships for female athletes. If we give greater importance to sport for the existing academic curriculum, a greater number of girls can benefit from this. A work opportunity today, women who have a sports background or who have undertaken the sports are considered to be an asset when they are taken on as a worker or an employee. Athletes need to face many obstacles during their career, and these hindrances stop them from continuing to practice sport. Trend sports are more covered in the media, and others are not considered at all. Media and sponsors can take on a more important role in breaking down gender prejudice, in recognizing sports personalities and celebrities. Families should support and encourage their girls to participate in all kinds of sports without any hesitation. Times are changing, even though slowly. Indian women are showing their ability, and at a world level they are at the top in terms of researchers, doctors, and young athletes such as Yadur Shashid Amalik and Yitak Amakar have been awarded the highest accolades in the country after making the country proud in various world events. I think women can obtain more medals at a national and international level if they are given the best structures for training. As women, we were born as multitaskers, and as I said, if they are given opportunities and they are helped, they become more self-confident and more aware, and they can be members of a team. We all work together as a team, and every game has its rules. When they play with us, they become more intelligent because they follow a school and an education curriculum. There are rules we need to follow. We need to be clean, accurate, punctual. These are many things which are good. Sometimes some companies decide to sponsor our girls, and the media play a very important role.
Media plays a very important role, and we can give
Possiamo dare
so much
molto
to
ai
our
nostri bambini nel far
We
crescere.
can give a lot to our children in making them grow. We speak to them a lot and we explain to them that when we play as a team, we work better and we support one another.
that when you play as a team, it works better. You know, we have support of each other. And if all this goes on with,
Se tutto questo
teamwork, as
lavoro
I
di
said,
squadra proseguisse,
If all this teamwork continues, then certainly Indian women will be successful and there would be more girls playing at a national and international level.
events and as I say, financially, most of the families, with children have got talent, are not able to.
Inoltre, le famiglie di coloro
Furthermore, the families of those who have great talent but not many resources have greater difficulty because sometimes even just traveling is very expensive and therefore we need to go and beg for money to people just to have the essential material to train. For example, with hockey, we need a bat, we need a mouth guard, we need all kinds of protection, and this is very expensive.
e questa è la ragione per la quale noi donne non siamo al
This is the reason why, as women, we are not equal to men who have much more help. In sport in India, much more support is given to men than to women. This is why we try to help women to make their voice heard, encouraging them and helping them. Support is the most essential thing.
Bene, e io penso che
Wonderful. I believe that you have certainly many different impressions coming from these two very precious contributions. I would ask you to share them in the Padlet link on the chat so you can share them with us and we can do all this together. So keep writing. And now we move on from India, which is a country that, especially at this time, is the most impacted by the pandemic. This is a country which is not among the most fortunate financially, and it's wonderful to see how there are similarities between our Western world and the Asian world, but also substantial differences both in terms of culture and in economic terms. So from India we move on to Brazil, the other country which has been greatly impacted by the pandemic, and we delve into the experience of Donna Neide, who made a great empowerment tool out of sport for herself and for those women with whom she started a range of social projects made of sport and through sport. And so we hear directly from her voice what sport is, was, and represents for her.
Ciao a tutti dalla settimana Mondo Unito.
Hello everybody from the United World Week. We are here with Neide from São Paulo in Brazil. I know we will listen to some witnesses from India, from Italy. We're in Brazil now. Neide, how's it going? All good. It's a great privilege to be here with you today. We would like to get to know you a little bit, Neide. We know you come from the northeast of Brazil, Bahia to São Paulo. And during your life, you have discovered sport. And as a woman, there are many obstacles, as in all the rest of the world. What difficulties do you see here in Brazil? Right from back in the 70s when I began with sport, things were very difficult. they were improving thanks to women athletes. We have a memory of a marathon runner in Brazil, Marcia Hadlock. Our great marathon runners have fought for being able to participate in female marathons in order to make these equal to the men's status. The situation of inclusion was unacceptable. We also live in a country which is the country of football, soccer. It's wonderful to see this. Men play soccer and women deal with the home. There are women like Marcia Hadlock. I was one of the first from the outskirts to ride in San Silvestre among the roads of São Paulo in Brazil. I was the only woman who ran in the community. When I saw that there were women who wanted to run and there was an enormous barrier, first of all, because people said these women are of a certain age, they should have started earlier to train in order to be true athletes. People don't understand that pursuing a physical activity is a right and that we can do so in the peripheries of São Paulo. For those who are looking, we are in extreme poverty and women are even poorer, and people need to go out to work and to support themselves and nothing else. But many people began running with me, and it was a challenge after the other. It was an issue of what clothes to wear, because we had never had access to professional gear. Only men had the right tracksuits, and we had to adapt in order to have more comfortable clothing which was appropriate to our body shape. Over time, we had greater access, and we slowly were able to purchase them as well, not only for running, but for tennis and everything else. But for women coming from the outskirts, from all over Brazil, we really need to be warriors in order to practice a sport, even today, because there is little equipment, and it is very difficult to accept this in families. There was a lot of female training and empowerment, a lot of dialogue, a lot of conversation in order to reach this moment and convince women that they need to use their time to undertake physical activity. We need to have the pleasure of getting old, and if we wish to have the pleasure of getting old like my family, where my grandmother was 94 and some were older than 100 years, you need to keep your body in training because bodies are made to move. So this movement you made in order to bring sport to the peripheries for the women of the outskirts had an effect of emancipation for women. Why? Yes, people said that they were inspired. But the woman who inspired the greatest proportion was a woman who was 60, and she wanted to run with me against everything and everyone. This was the 80s, and this woman who was 75, and the only woman of 75 who was ever able to complete the São Paulo marathon. Why? Because somebody had said to her, "You can do it. You can do it." And when these women saw this woman of 60 with such a success in life, said, "I can do so as well. Let's go." And the fact that we have also began to work with girls, teenagers, and young people then began to inspire the mother in turn, who was running alongside her daughter, or maybe a grandmother who was running alongside her grandchild. One inspires the other. There is a strong link even with religious communities, both evangelical and Catholic. This is my religion. And all these women seek a quality of life, because when they go to the doctor, the first thing the doctor says to them is, how about undertaking a physical activity? And people see a long life in physical activity. I'm only 61, and I think I will continue to run for many, many years. This is wonderful. We know that sport today has a lot to say and leaves space for debate as well. This slow entry of women in the world of sport, do you think this can give a contribution for sport to be more inclusive, more fraternal, less of an exchange in terms of conflict? Yes, as far as the culture of encounter and juxtaposition, it's necessary to give a voice to women by using this wonderful tool of social transformation, which is sport. This is participation sport and not competitive sport. Sport which gives dignity and power to women, to girls. We have the ability, the gift, and the wisdom to reinvent ourselves, particularly the women from the peripheries. It's incredible how we have this ability to continually reinvent. It is a great diversity which we find, and we respect the individual dimension of every woman within the community. I say that it is right that for many, life is moving on, but for us women in the outskirts of these great cities, running is life. This is the message which I bear day after day. The benefits of this sport is taking me places. We can take all these benefits to women and do so wherever we like. I've had the privilege of working on this in a simple community. 8 women traveled abroad with me in competitions around the world, following the invitation of countries which asked us to share our stories, to offer our lives, myself and another woman. Imagine what this means for those who never had a passport, who never left their country, to enter a plane and to cross the ocean and to compete in another country where they meet other people, other languages. And the first place we went, I like to be able to share this, was the half marathon in Lisbon. When they offered to pay for the trip, I said, you need to take me to the shrine of Our Lady of Fatima. This was the greatest blessing of my life, because when I was 5 years old, the only thing which I remember was praying and crowning Our Lady of Fatima, who was the patron saint of that small piece of land where we were, and we prayed the rosary with those women who came from farming, and they came to pray the rosary. These women in some way encouraged me to come here. They told me about faith and hope, that one day we would have hoped, that one day we would have been happy. And I found happiness in inspiring and motivating women, not only women from the peripheries, but all those women who follow us through social media and in sport. It is wonderful for all women to have this time of their own, so that they are able to take care of their health, of their temple, which is their body. Thank you, Donna Neide. I would like to thank you because I would like to speak to all those people coming from all over the world. This is one of the most impacted countries in the world from the pandemic. And before beginning this recording, Neide said that this was the most beautiful day, having received some donations. So thank you for all your efforts in helping all these people who are suffering. And we ask you, if you can, to share with us, share our project, and to help us. Thank you.
Aren't these experiences fantastic? This international journey really opens our heart and our souls. So now let's continue our journey. Let's come back to Italy. My name is Lawrence. I've got a degree in law. I've been working for 12 years in sport. I'm an instructor. I play tennis and I work with Sport Meet. I'm not on my own. Today I have the great opportunity here to have a conversation who is an athlete and a mother, thinking of what Lucia said, and who went beyond the disapproval of women's sport, and also then thinking of what Lucia said about the South. So I'd like to introduce you to Maddalena Musumeci, who also won an Olympic gold in 2004 with water polo. Are you there, Maddalena? Hello, everybody. Hi, Lorenzo. Thanks to all of you for having involved me in this session this afternoon. Thanks to Lucia as well, who gave a theoretical introduction, but which is truly the experience lived by many athletes. So maybe we can have a conversation about that with Lawrence. So before starting with the first questions, just to remind you, the Padlet is open. You can share, write questions and impressions there. So, Maddalena, tell us something about yourself, your story. When did you get involved in sport? Who helped you, and how did you get into water polo? It's my dad's fault. Because he's a very sporty man. So I'm the youngest of three children. My brothers, who are older than me by quite a few years, they all went to the pool. So I was very little when I first went into the pool, and I never left it because it became my life. I swam for many years. And then looking at the teams in my city playing water polo, I managed to see beyond a simple game. But I've got goosebumps when I saw the team at work, this sharing, working together, sharing, this being in alliance with one another. And that's what helped me to have a variety of experiences and to fight, in inverted commas, towards what we experienced in my sporting career. At a certain point, you moved on to high-level sport with water polo. What can you tell us about that transition? Yes, you said high level, because as Lucia emphasized, we couldn't say professional sport, because there was a war saying that there were only four, and they weren't women's, only four professional sports, and they weren't women's sports. So despite nonetheless, our commitment was very significant, and the young people today, girls today, was in a commitment as professionals, because we had to organize ourselves between school, sport, our home life, because as teenagers, we were teenagers more or less, so we also like to have our boyfriend. Then you go ahead, you have a family. The fact that you might postpone marriage for sport and not have children too soon, it's all true, because so as to participate in the Athens Olympics, many of us postponed our date of marriage and pregnancy. And then I was the first to marry. I had a girl, as did many of my other friends in the team. The transition, there aren't many stories, but they come to mind of recording. But this passage was in '95 when I started playing in the water polo team in my own town. I won 10 shields and 4 cups. So we actually did very well as a team, and the team went on after me to win a lot more shields and cups. Then I went into the national team, so my commitment doubled. I was at university. It wasn't really all that easy, but my commitment enabled me to do it and to reach these very high levels, and also to participate to compete in the Olympics. As Lucia said earlier, you were telling me yesterday, you told me that this transition to high-level sport made you experience difficulties, some related to the fact of being a woman and not being recognized, as you said, as a professional sport. Also, expenses you had to undertake, or can you tell us something about that? Or other problems you faced? We experienced as a team in 1998 when we discovered that our male colleagues won prizes or grants, or given grants that were higher than ours. So there we started on a whole series of struggles, strikes, to try to make our voices heard. And we engaged the Equal Opportunities Commission. We really fought to be considered equally with our male colleagues. And sometimes we were really humiliated because we were told that there's that the difference between water polo for men and women was water polo itself. So it was very difficult hearing this kind of thing. But what we shared was passion and determination. So we always tried we managed to take some steps forward, but for sure there's an awful lot to be done still. And I think that this year there's a beginning of change. People were saying earlier about the election in a few days' time on the 13th of May, and I feel inspired. I'm not against, I'm inspired by something. Because when you're for something, it's because you're inspired by that thing. And I think now Antonella Belluti can truly represent sport in general beyond the differences of gender. There are certainly her candidacy and what she is putting forward to be as being considered the reasons for being the right person to cover that role is truly what I would like to see in sport. I'd like to tell my daughter, who's now 10, and she's now playing water polo, so maybe in a few years' time, she could be considered, she too could be considered as a worker, someone spending days and not having to hide from her teachers that she's doing sport, as people have to do in some places. People consider that school and sport are contradictory to one another, these two careers. Instead, of course, they can go hand in hand if there is something that's organized, because you can achieve something, but with very great difficulty. So if sports is accessible, if it's inclusive, accessible to everyone. We talked about the marathon, and people doing a marathon simply to stay well, to stay healthy, because people don't necessarily always want to compete, but instead people do sport to stay well. So these are the things that can to help people go ahead to add a few pieces to the puzzle to make a complete picture. Thank you very much. I think that with your description, a specific and concrete description, explaining what we heard also from Lucia earlier, we have very sound reasons for working to enable truly that sport can acquire this 50-50 approach, this equality that should be 100%, equality men and women together in sport, without even having to go half and half, but making sport for all. Yes, if we were all in a team together, we could do something truly important. This is perhaps the best message of all. So now we have some questions. We've got not very much time because we lengthened things a little bit, which is obviously what can happen easily during these times. But just very briefly, perhaps, many things have emerged from what was written in the Padlet. I think that the reflection that you've just mentioned, actually being a team together, men and women, I don't know whether if you men would like to say something. There's really hardly any time at all. We were talking a lot about women, but it is something where we need to be together in this. I can certainly say that this hour we have spent together has added an awareness and knowledge to me that has also increased my esteem and trust that women can really go ahead far in sport. We have before us the opportunity to make a difference. This too has emerged. What really matters, is that we can be equal to everybody, have equality among everybody. So we can take this on board and really make an effort. I too think that it's a question of going ahead together on a daily basis with experiences that we have every day, and Sport Meet too is a place where we try to
non ci siano situazioni e cercare di togliere anche di essere anche d'esempio in alcuni casi in cui veramente non c'è questa distinzione.
So there isn't a distinction, there shouldn't be this distinction. If there is some distinction, it's not to do with gender. In daily life, in a tennis school with over 200 children, there are boys and girls together. And the idea is that whether the future champion is a Nadal or a Martina, we have to encourage these children from when they're little to go ahead and aim high. So this competition, the sense of competition and an effort goes beyond gender. But we can give, in Sport Meet, we can give an example of this. We must give these students we are training an example in this. I've got a question for you, Lucia, which was in the Padlet. Very briefly, we've only got 2 minutes. It's difficult to answer because it would need a lot more time. How can you improve education? Because often it's teachers who encourage or highlight this difference and put forward the difference between sport and for boys and girls. So perhaps at the level of educational level of the institutions and the management of schools could help overcome the stereotypes and promote a greater equality between boys and girls in sport. I'd say that in every sphere, even starting from obstetrics when a child is born, that you should be given a manual on how to bring people up without gender discrimination for the children. We have to give their parents this booklet. We have to give them basic education. Everything starts there. Because if parents are educated, they too will educate their children correctly. And then the parents also are teachers of students in schools very often. So I think we need a great change must come about from those who decide that those who have children must be responsible. They must be aware that they have a great responsibility. They have to give food, education, a roof, and gender equality to their children. Because it's part of the Italian constitution, it would be enough to give the constitution to these parents, the Italian constitution, but sum it up of the things to avoid, and also then of good practices, good practice to enable, to avoid gender discrimination. This is for parents. Thank you. Thank you so much to those who are live with us. Thank you to the contributions made on video, which were truly a very precious enrichment for all of us. And so for people who are going to look at this session online later, please keep writing on the Padlet. There can be continual exchange until even when our seminar is over. So I thank you all again and remind you that the United World Week isn't over, it's ongoing.
The United World Project.
So there are several upcoming events. And you can see on the website of the United World Project all that has happened and is going to happen. So the International Convention between the 7th and 9th of May from Brussels. That's important. And also the round table with Jeffrey Sachs and Pasquale Ferrara on the 8th, if I heard correctly. So the subject they are dealing with and sport are very much connected, as you will see. So please keep up to date on social networks. Thank you for having been with us. If you've got questions or need more information, write to info@sportmeet.org. Thank you to you all. Goodbye.
Ciao.
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 Ciao, grazie.
Grazie a tutti.
Ciao.
Grazie. Tutte.
Wunderschön.
Gondoskodás.
Polvoda.
Care.
Proteger.
Забота.
رعاية. Prendre soin.
Ter atenção.
Sorge tragen.
Niaisu.
Cuidar.
Aruga.